Hello everybody, welcome to the special CUBE conversation. You know, agentic, it's the hottest topic in the community today, but there's a lot of confusion and a lot of agent washing going around. And specifically, people are trying to figure out what exactly agentic AI is all about. You know, what's real beyond single agent systems? How can enterprises deploy agents to solve real problems? Where are the use cases? Where's the value? So we're really excited to have Amit Ayal-Govran and Shaked Eskayo on theCUBE to discuss the company they founded, Kubiya, which is a company that leverages conversational AI to automate DevOps processes. They were one of the first, if not the first, to deliver DevOps specific so-called virtual assistants, or in today's parlance, agent-based systems. Amit and Shaked, welcome to theCUBE. Great to see you guys.
Likewise. Thank you, Dave.
Likewise, great to be here. Thank you.
You bet. Shaked, let's start with you. You know, let's talk about the specific challenges, the frustrations in DevOps that inspired you and Amit to start the company. How did you translate what you saw, that initial pain, customer pain, into the products and the core value proposition of Kubiya?
Yeah, so I think that in order to really go through that, we can start off with a true story. I mean, true origin problem that a lot of DevOps, platform engineers, infrastructure engineers are dealing with daily. The true story is during my experience working as an SRE manager for a large fintech company. And back then, we were a very small team. Suppose we were four engineers that basically needed to deal with a ratio of 100 engineers in the research and development department. And we didn't really have the tools to offload the time to automation paradox, how we call it at Kubiya, back then in the case. Because essentially when you have a problem, and that's how we relate it to time to automation, when the DevOps engineer gets a problem, the problem could be something he needs to solve. It could be a request from a developer that could come in many channels. He needs now to decode and understand what is the origin of the problem, and the developer never knows how to essentially get it himself. He's very dependent on the engineer. So was the dependency on our team. Back then, we tried a lot of solutions. I'm sure that a lot of you guys are aware of internal developer platforms, abusing CI/CD platforms in order to get this kind of automation layer that allows us to both get predictable and fast delivery of those automations, as well as being able for the developers to know how to get what it is that they want in a very natural way. Back then, it wasn't really possible. I mean, you need to invest a lot in order to get something like that going. And most likely, it won't be dynamic enough to fit the nature of the problems. So Kubiya is basically a platform that we built in order to deliver the exact solution to this problem. This problem is divided to help both the operator, right, the operation teams, which needs this predictability, they need this security, but they also want to work in a way that they already seem to be proven to be working. Concepts like CI/CD, IAC, and essentially stateless automation, as well as to the developer who does not understand, the tech org does not understand how to consume those resources. And we can essentially give this gateway to both of the parties, where the operators can continue to work in the same way they're used to. But also from the other hand, the developers and everyone who wants to consume those automations can get them in a very natural and straightforward way.
Yeah, okay, and then Amit, the name Kubiya, if I understand, is cube in Hebrew. Presumably for K8s, not for SiliconANGLE, the cube, but very clever.
Would it help if I said the other?
Yeah. But you know, I want to ask you, Amit, about DevOps in general, the whole idea, the concept, fantastic, bring dev and ops together instead of throwing stuff back and forth over the fence. And it kind of became ops dev, but the nirvana, the holy grail has been self-service. Why, in your opinion, has self-service been so elusive in DevOps?
Dave, you've hit it on the head. This is exactly the thesis that we're trying to solve. I think automation, as much as it pains me to say, because there's always a better automation, automation's never been the problem here. It's always been what happens when you combine the trilogy of tools, processes, and people together, and what is that outcome, right? And what we've found is that you can automate anything you want as long as people are familiar with how to consume it. It doesn't interrupt their process. It doesn't force them to do unnatural things within their day-to-day workflow. And it just vibes within organizational flow. If it interrupts it in any way, it may be the best tool ever created for developer experience. If it forces them to do unnatural things, go and click around a dashboard, authenticate themselves, they don't have the keys, now they have to go back into some kind of queue in order to get help, it defeats the whole purpose. And what agentic systems, which I'm sure we'll get into very shortly, what it's allowed us to do, and I'm saying this is a general statement, not just Kubiya specific, is it's allowed us to change the form factor of the human interaction with their tools in a way that you could actually go ahead, in many respects, interact in a decoupled way from your tools, systems of records, and any standard organizational flow that has hampered some of these day-to-day operations. So what we're doing with Kubiya, very much to respect to what Shaked was saying, is we're allowing you to effectively augment your existing processes, merging tools, people, and processes into one. An agentic system is in many ways trying to mimic human behavior. So if it mimics human behavior, you're merging tools, processes, and people into one form factor, which is interacting between people to people interaction, which is by far the most natural way to do stuff.
Well, thank you for that. And it makes a lot of sense. I mean, make people comfortable and they'll spend more time and be more productive in the environment. And it's interesting, I look at your logo and it reminds me of UiPath in the early days with RPA, but of course a lot of that was scripts and hard coded. Now we fast forward a decade and we've got this notion of agentic. So I want to talk about it now. I mean, maybe you could address this. You have coined a term or created something called Agentic-native. I mean, I've used the term AI native. We all have heard of cloud native. People talk about augmented agentic. What's the difference? Why did you feel the need to actually shine a light on this notion of agentic native? What is it? What does it mean? And why should we care?
That's a great segue, because not trying to be cliche here, but not all agents are created equal. And the way we're viewing it is, it's very much following a similar pattern we've seen with the cloud migration, lift and shift, right? You used to have a monolith application, you slapped it into the cloud because everyone was going SaaS, but doesn't mean you have a SaaS platform because you've lifted and shifted and slapped the same architecture in the cloud, right? It's a whole concept of cloud native. You have to have a distributed system. You have to have microservices architecture. You have to rethink how you're going to go and deploy and serve, and of course, obviously, and consume it with the end user, because it changes the entire refactoring of how you're going about this. And at first, it may seem that there are similar patterns. You can go and slap an API around and call it an agent around an existing system, but all you're doing is you're moving around macros. You're moving around UI elements. You're not actually going and orchestrating true end-to-end processes that involve multiple systems of record, multiple sources of truth. Of course, you can go into the architecture between the three layers. So I'll just give it in high level. The first layer has to have a predictable, sound outcome that all platform engineers are effectively agreed on. Best practices using infrastructure as code, open policy agent for authorization, permissioning, enforcement. You're talking about serving all of the large language models on the customer premise because there's security concerns around doing inferencing on the online or for a third party, and this follows that pattern. Now you have the second layer, which everybody seems to be putting all their energy into, which is the application layer. The application layer, and that's where you're going with the model selection and the model tuning and synthetic data and function calling, which we'll get into in a second. But at the end of the day, that's only one piece out of a three-piece puzzle in order to get right for you to have an agentic-native system. The third piece, which often gets overlooked, is the UI UX. How are people going to be interacting with your system? It's great if you have everything working, but if at the end of the day, the user has to wait for you 5 minutes to get the response they want, whether the agent times out, whether the human times out, no one's going to be around for 5 minutes waiting for that, unless you have UI elements like emojis, progress bars, long-running tasks. You can go into that in a little bit, but at the end of the day, there's 3 layers, and those 3 layers, you cannot skip them. You cannot skip the work. Otherwise, you have a Babel tower. All comes collapsing when it comes down to humans consuming this in enterprise-grade fashion, of course, with all the edge cases that come with the enterprise deployments.
Okay, I like the Tower of Babel analogy. And then, so that you just laid out kind of your first principles, those 3 layers. And let's get into the architecture, Shaked. I want to understand what's needed to achieve true agentic workflows from an architectural standpoint. Amit just talked about, function calling, which is really, maybe that's only one of the layers and is not enough. But you've seen Anthropic, you've seen LangGraph. There's a lot of folks trying to sell the agentic vision. What's your perspective on the architecture and kind of what's wrong with what's going on out there in your view?
Absolutely. So first of all, I want to get back to for just a second on like how initially we started off this part of the conversation. We mentioned agentic-native, and I want to drill down around what native means. I mean, what is the definition of native? Because essentially, you're agentic-native, but you're doing it for a purpose. You're serving some purpose. The product is supposed to solve a true pain. And the way we see it is that those providers, there's the big ones, there's the smaller ones, but essentially they are very generic. They're focusing more around the platform kind of, I wouldn't say platform, maybe framework kind of capabilities, which are not dedicated to a specific purpose. You need to shape them in order to serve the purpose of what the agent is supposed to be doing. By design, this is not native. You need essentially to build on top of it, and building on top of it involves a lot of complexity. And I want to go through some of them in the realm of cloud operations, which is essentially the big thing. Everybody nowadays are trying to tackle the problem of execution, because in the end, LLM is great, very smart. We learned that we can also involve real-time data with RAG, right, which is getting out and back from the industry in terms of technologies. But when it comes to execution, it has, first of all, nothing to do, with LLM. Execution in the end is a problem that the industry has and is still having, because in the end, you want to execute something. It doesn't matter if it's the developer consuming it from some platform like AWS, and you could do that in so many ways, and that's where you're also losing the standard, which is also a true problem. But when it comes to really being able to manage it properly, not just like cool AI, yeah, I did this very simple operation. but talking about problems that by their nature are very, very complex, and they require a lot of predictability. Okay, so I'll give an example, and through this example, we can understand what I mean. But essentially, in Kubiya, we have a way that we have established that basically allows to execute those tools, call it function calling, in a way that is very stateless, which means that we take the tools as black boxes. We don't treat them as something that is part of the application layer that Amit was mentioning, but we treat them more around the infrastructure layer, and we let the operators manage it in the same way they would manage Docker containers. So it shouldn't be any different. The industry already solved the problem of stateless execution using containers, and we're leveraging the same technology, which means that you don't need to change or to build something in order to get the AI to do it for you, because there's already a repository full of such containers that the industry is already using, and it's already maintained. So in architecture kind of way, what we did is, once you want to execute something, the things that you need to think about is as simple as how are you going to deal with credentials? Let's say the LLM can, I don't know, access some API. It's great, it's good, but which token is it going to use? Which identity? Is it going to be a service account? Is that going to be something that is based on OAuth, based on the user identity? If so, how it's going to be managed? These are very, very hard problems that, alongside the agentic-native element, they need to be solved inside an organization in order to really establish these ways for agents to consume those operations in a stateless and predictable way.
So can I interrupt you for a second? So let me understand this. So going back to the 3 layers. So the first layer, you've got security, presumably governance, you're doing enterprise class capabilities there. That second layer, that stateless layer, if I understand it correctly, you're removing the burden from the application, putting it into the infrastructure for fundamental things like identity, if I understand that correctly, which presumably does a couple of things. It simplifies the application piece, and it makes it more horizontal. So I can use this across virtually any application because it's in the infrastructure. And then I'm presuming the UI is natural language. But did I get that right in the 3 layers, particularly that second layer and pushing that capability down into the infrastructure? And what does that mean for the application and the developer? Please help us understand that. And again, did I get that right?
Yeah, you got it totally right. I can use a real-world example of a typical organization that, let's say, they have, I don't know, Jenkins server, okay? And now let's say you want to enable an LLM, okay, to establish communication where the developer can talk with the Jenkins server, right? Trigger this job for me. Why did my pipeline fail? All of these questions that developers are asking all the time. And in order for the LLM to really do that, it needs to run from within the organizational infrastructure, right? Because the Jenkins is not in the internet. It's not AWS that you can go to some API and just talk with it. So the deeper aspects you need to think about when dealing with infrastructure is, first of all, how are you going to run it on an enterprise grade kind of closed network, right? Which could be, in a lot of cases, also related to LLM. If you're using public LLM, right, you also enter the problem of compliance, right, and LLM security. and a lot of organizations would want for some workloads to use even their own large language models, right? We have a lot of organizations that are using a llama with function calling, and it's completely enough for them, and the platform allows that to them. So infrastructure-wise, if you want to do local kind of execution, you're going to also need scale, because you wouldn't keep a lot of servers waiting to proxy those requests to the different kind of
Sure.
platform that you have in your network, right? So you're going to need a native, easy way to do that. So we integrate with platforms like Kubernetes natively. We have a Kubernetes operator, and our customers basically can create these local runner entity that allows them to deploy the AI workloads right on their infrastructure. So it's not only the tool, like the stateless tool execution, but it's also the ability to live inside their network and give them the flexibility to do things in the way that they do already, right? So I don't need to learn something new. I already know Kubernetes. I already know how to deploy resources, right? So we treat them in a headless way, which is basically allowing them to move very fast, because AI is a buzzword for operators. I mean, they could create a nice script, that might call an LLM, maybe to do a simple function calling, but they need more rather a structured way in order to do that. You cannot do that without a structured way, because if you don't have a structured way, you'll get lost. You'll have a lot of code in the application layer that could do a lot of functions that where they're going to run, right? I mean, the application lives in a single place, so you need now to divide it. How are you going to run on the other side? Those the kind of the complexities that you're going to face in the infrastructure layer.
Right, you really thought through the developer experience and how to simplify that and let them focus on what they do best. So, I want to ask you, we always use this term agent washing. You're a small company, you're up against, big narratives from whether it's hyperscalers or big application companies like Salesforce and ServiceNow who are, pushing this. And in a way, that's a good thing for you because they're, opening up new markets. On the flip side, there's a lot of agent washing going on. Do you have, and you're doing some really groundbreaking work as many startups do. What are your thoughts on all the, agentic chatter out there in the universe?
The first thought is thank you for doing my market education for me. That
Yeah.
really helps with the demand generation aspect. But all kidding aside, there's really just a few areas that we need to focus on as a startup in order to be laser focused and vector in on what we know works. I think when all the whitewashing kind of dies down, it may take a few years for that, people are going to wake up to a reality. They slapped architectures that aren't related to one another. They had certain expectations, and those expectations may have fallen short because of the outcome that these agents were able to deliver. And when it's all said and done, that's what matters. Can you deliver the outcome to the customer's expectation and replace real functional work that your current workforce is struggling with and you haven't been able to overcome based on the existing limitations? And I think there's a world of difference. And again, not taking shots at anybody, because every single platform has their own unique flow that they're very good at. But some of these platforms out there are talking about agents, as in this is a general workforce. They could do anything. They can take complex tasks. Well, guess what? They could probably update records on a database and do so in a very predictable and reliable way. But that's a very simple function that they're doing. What happens when you have an operation that has over 200 function calls, requires you to go for multiple data sources, databases, authentications, authorizations, and have 100% accuracy on the outcome, deterministic output, 100 times out of 100, or production is down and people lose their jobs. That matters. And that's where we really do believe that where the cream rises to the top is the companies that put in the hard work first, not to skip any steps. yes, talk vision, but also do the hard work that's required to achieve that vision will be the beneficiaries of this. And we believe we're in prime position to benefit from this because we've been putting almost 3 years of hard work, just laying down the groundwork for the infrastructure to support the agentic native dream, right? The agentic native vision that we have.
Yeah, and the concern is if you don't have that 100% accuracy, or you don't have that enterprise class security and governance, problems will occur, and that'll be a backlash for the entire industry. So that's something that we have to be really careful about. And I want to ask about sort of the role of the human, and maybe this is a question for Shaked, but as you think about Kubiya automating these complex DevOps workflows, what is the role for humans? How do you make sure the human judgment is still part of the equation and you're not getting sort of overwhelmed by automation, but you still want to have the benefits of efficiency? How do you balance that?
We can take a typical known way for developers, for DevOps engineers to provide self-service infrastructure, right? I will take this example. Suppose I have an internal developer portal, and from this portal, I'm going to expose, right, self-service kind of operations that I would want the development team to be able to access, right? And the problem with that, right, is that you're going to need to work very hard, okay, in order to get another box into this self-service toolbox. And also the developers, right, from the other hand, are going to need to understand and consume what's going on in this portal, right? So in that case, it's a user interface, right? User interface like a front-end, API, CLI that internal developer portals are doing. We're doing it in the same way. I mean, the same way on making things structured. But in terms of how users are consuming it, we still have like these two personas. We have the operator who sets everything up. He wants to get this feedback iteration, right? This predictability. He wants to understand and know that everything that he provided for within the platform, right, is governed, is secured, that he can manage it easily, and of course that it's audited, right? He can see and understand what's going on because it's his operations that he's exposing. And for the developers that are consuming those chat interfaces, right, we provide the flexibility to the organization as part of the platform in order to decide like how the feedback loop is going to be. Because we provide to the operator the ways to audit with common protocols that is already aware of and is already using in production. Not something new that he needs to learn in order to get the continuous change management going. So the resources that are exposed in our platform to the operator, he manages them in the same way he would manage cloud infrastructure. So he gets the same predictability level because we take off the AI complexity from him. So we put on top of what we just said, right, function calling, local execution, being able to run on the customer infrastructure. We wrap it in a platform that exposes resources that basically he can leverage to manage like these AI workflows. And AI workflows, just like any workflow automation, is complex due to all of those problems that we mentioned. I mean, it's relevant for even before the age of large language models. And for the developers, they would want a very easy way, right, to access those and being able to really know and audit what's going on. So I can use and refer an example of just-in-time access, right, where developers would want access to cloud infrastructure. Suppose there's an issue in production, and now a developer needs to debug an RDS database, right? Suppose And if you would want to, let's say, expose something like that, right, such a complex use case, you're going to work very, very hard in order to do that. But also, if you have it in place, you would also want to understand that you get this level of predictability because it's your RDS in production, right? You will want to get the true way of understanding that what you're doing is the right way. And through those resources that we give to the operator, and through those interfaces that the operators can give to the rest of the organization, we are basically covering both of the parts, because you need to speak the operator language, because he doesn't care about the fact that it's cool AI and LLM that are doing now stuff. He wants to be able to build new operations on top of it, being able to audit what he currently have, and never lose sight and control. So we give him that through all of the resources that he already knows how to deal with in these daily operations. And for the developers, essentially, we had a lot of market education, thanks to everything that has been going on in the world of LLMs and chat models, right, in the last 2 years. And thanks to that, essentially, they also know, I mean, chat interface, it's already easy to consume because you're speaking in your own language already, right? I mean, I speak English. I'm going to, just like I would approach to a DevOps engineer, I'm going to now ask for whatever operation it is that I want. And thanks to auditing capabilities, thanks to governance like enforcement, right? Integrating with software like open policy agents in order to decide who can do what, the governance layer, combining continuous feedback that the operators can get from those self-service practices that they expose. They could have this continuous iteration, and both parties are in complete predictability, and that's the way that we tackle that.
Well, thank you for that. I'm hearing you've trusted, predictable, you've got the cloud operating model, you've got familiar workflows. I picked up on the audit trail because if something goes wrong, you need to know who did what, when, where, what actually happened, so you can remediate and make sure it doesn't happen again. So I really appreciate that. Let's close, Amit, with a little vision, a little CEO vision here. What's the future of self-service DevOps? What's that look like? You've talked about enabling self-service DevOps with AI. What does that look like in practice? The agentic piece, how do you see it reshaping the broader software development landscape in the next 3 to 5 years?
That's great, because we already have an audit trail of our own. Being able to go a few years back when Kubiya started talking about self-service using large language models and agentic systems, and you've seen how the vision from a technology, even from the ground level with our customers, has evolved and really gone and tracked according to plan. So in other words, we're now in 2025, January 25. I already see a place where in the not too distant future, even as early as before end of 2025, early 26, you already have a self-operating model. In other words, a digital employee that's able to take a lot more functionality than just voice to text or text to text interactions. You can now have voice enabled, and you can have digital media enabled, and you can have omni-channel. So imagine this digital employee joins you in a war room, has her own actual avatar that's interacting with you, speaking to you in natural language, and giving you feedback. This is that next level. You can have, even within mobile applications, the ability, just like you're doing today with ChatGPT, interacting and having a full-on conversation. You could have a full-on conversation with your digital teammate. This is more than just having a Slack-based or Teams-based or chat-based interaction. This is really the way humans envision working with other humans, only in this case, this digital human or digital employee that augments your work and takes on the hard, unnatural, and not fun work from you, right? The toilless work from your plate. Now you could go and have them available to you really 24 hours a day, no breaks, no need to pay RSUs. I'm just joking for all the public companies out there, but you know, in many respects, just having that best of both worlds right? The employee that gives you the ultimate experience without the HR overhead associated with them.
Guys, thank you so much. I want to refer folks, hey, if you're interested in this topic, go to Kubiya.ai. It's Kubiya.ai. Some groundbreaking work in the DevOps sector and in Agentic, really in the forefront. And I think a lot of the work that you guys are doing will apply broadly across the industry. So really appreciate it. Congratulations on doing that hard work, getting to where you are. Love to have you back to track the progress, and we will definitely see you around the circuit this year. Thanks so much.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David. Thank you so much.
All right, and thank you for watching, everybody. This is Dave Vellante for theCUBE and theCUBE Research. We'll see you next time.